How's it going, everyone? I think we are live right now. Super excited to be here. We're going to be going around and sort of just answering some questions that folks might have about doing Google Summer of Code with the Julia language. So with that, if we want to kick it off and do some really quick intros with the folks that we have on the call right now.
Okay, I'll start off. I'm Kaustav. I'm a final year undergraduate student at IIT Kharagpur. I did my GSOC last year, and the project was mainly about data structures, and I did some coding regarding hash tables and tree-related data structures. And my mentor was Jemison Nash. I guess somebody take it on from here.
Okay, I can go next. I am Francesco, and I'm a physics graduate from Italy. And my GSOC program last year was mainly centered about the implementation of the reservoir computing.jl library.
Okay, I'll take up from here. Hi, this is Saranjeet. I have worked on the nested sampling project for GSOC last year. So I was implementing the algorithmic variants of nested sampling with Turing team in the Julia organization.
Yeah, hi, this is Frank. I'm a PhD candidate from Switzerland, and my GSOC was last year and was about new stochastic differential equation solvers and sensitivity methods for it. And my mentors were Chris Okakos, Moritz Schauer, and Yingbo Ma.
Hi, I'm Kirill. I'm from St. Petersburg. Right now I'm continuing developing neural PDA in Julia Lab MIT, and my first time I contribute in Julia season contribution with the project of solving high-dimensional different equation using backward stochastic different equation. And last year I contributed in Google Summer of Code with the project Physics Inform Neural Networks. My mentor was also Chris Okakos.
Awesome. Thank you all. If you all want to just take a look again at the link, we got a bunch of questions coming in. There's some that are perhaps super high level and not necessarily specific to the Julia language. I think we can, if you all want to sort of just browse the questions and see if there's any ones that stick out, and we can answer those first.
Yeah, I can say something on what got you all started with Julia. So I started with my PhD to simulate differential equations, and then figured out that basically also the composability of the Julia language to simulate these differential equations was very nice. And then I saw the Google Summer of Code possibility, and then I thought that's a nice thing to develop tools also suitable for my research. So that was how I got in touch.
Yeah, my answer to that question would be similar. I started with Julia because I was looking for a language for my master thesis that was like as easy as Python, but as quick as Fortran, we could say. Those were my two other options. And luckily, my master thesis was also about reservoir computing. So once I looked into the project for GSOC, I found out that there were some directions in for this research, and so I applied.
Okay.
I'll say I have a different experience. Like, I started with Julia by browsing through the GSOC organizations. I was selecting the organization to do a GSOC, and thereupon I stumbled upon Julia, and I started learning this language, picking up the intricacies, and I got a hang of going about the PRs and all. So that's how I got started, and after that, it's been a very smooth journey interacting with this community and like contributing to whatever projects I could. Yeah. Sanjay, you can.
Okay, so I started with during my MPhil coursework. I was learning sampling algorithms, and after that, I joined the Julia community. And from over there, I got to know that there is this program called Google Summer of Code, and that is where I got to know more people who are interested into my work and a new topic that I learned over there, and finally made it into the program.
First time I heard about Julia from my professor in university, and about Google Summer of Code, I heard from my classmate, and I just tried to apply 2 years ago and contribute to Julia season of contribution. And it's just why I go to the solving different equation with neural network. It was like my research topic, scientific machine learning, and that's all.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't realize that so many of you had sort of come through in an academic lens for Julia, so that's super interesting. This is perhaps an interesting one. I think the top voted question right now is, how many PRs do I need to get selected? I have none yet, but I want to contribute to Julia through Google Summer of Code. So perhaps maybe it might be worth it to sort of go through all of your levels of contribution with Julia things prior to the actual being selected for Google Summer of Code. I will say, just generally for everybody, it's not like a specific number of PRs necessarily. I think it really just depends on the specific project. It depends on your specific background. It depends on the mentor. So the best thing that you can do is go and talk to the mentor, figure out what the expectation is beforehand. And they might say, there's no required PRs beforehand. They might say, it'd be really great to have 2 or 3. But I think it really just depends. So if you all want to go around and sort of talk about your level of involvement beforehand.
Yeah, I can start. So I did something like 2 or 3 PRs in advance. So like starting maybe 2 or 3 months before the GSOC actually started. But it wasn't not really the time I would have needed. It was more like I was already then pretty sure to start with the project. And then what I did was basically implementing some ODE solvers, because that was, at least at that time, typically was the starter PR for people who want to join the SciML organization. And then I pretty soon switched to the stochastic diffEQ package and also did there some minor pull requests. And typically I think a good start is, like Logan said, to talk to your mentors, but otherwise many PRs have labels like good first issue or help wanted, and this is like a good point to go to.
Really quick, someone has background noise, so if we all want to just stay muted unless we're specifically talking, that way we minimize background noise. Yeah, that was a great response. Anyone else want to hop in on this one?
Yeah, I think it's.
No, sorry, you go.
Okay, I think it's not depend how much PR you go. It's just the main goal is show your ability for successful finish the Google Summer of Code project. And yeah, one of the best way it's get some contribution in Julia or implement some prototype of the project, or just show your ability of you can coding and you can understand the project and what you describe in proposal.
Yeah, I think in general, I don't even think I had a proper PR before applying. I just had a thread of comments with Chris Rakaukas under an issue that was open under, I was at neuropde.gl, I guess. At the time, yeah, it had a different name. But yeah, we had a discussion about the implementation of a paper, and I was just linking some code that I had developed on my local machine. So it wasn't a proper PR, and it became computed.gl after my proposal. And so, I mean, there is no magic number as it has been said before. So it's just, getting to know the project, getting to show that you are capable of implementing some code in that area, and you have knowledge of the general surrounding, and of course interacting with the community, and in particular the possible mentors, of course.
Nice. I don't think we're actually getting a ton of really great questions, so we can sort of start to power through some of these. That was a really great one. I think the next sort of top ranked question is how much domain expertise is a candidate expected to have prior to applying? And I think the other question, and we can answer this, we can sort of answer both of these at the same time. The other question that is top rated is, before selecting your projects, were you intimidated by the projects? I am not good in some fields because I am young, but I'm willing to learn. So I hope this doesn't hinder my application. And I think that's a great call out. I think even for me, when I'm sort of reading through some of the projects for GSOC, you know, they're all super technical for the most part. And I think if you're coming from a background that's sort of less technical, it makes sense to try to find a topic that doesn't require a ton of domain expertise, and you can sort of just leverage your basic CS background. But anyone want to sort of touch on this aspect as far as the background, how much domain expertise you need and such?
Well, I
can answer this one.
Oh, okay, Sanjit, go ahead.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, then.
Okay, so I come from statistics background, and so yeah, it's not necessary that you come from a technical background for this program. Even if you are coming from a non-technical background but have a good hold of your subject, it should suffice when you're working through the program. And about being intimidated, yes, most of us feel that way. But what is essential is that you ask your questions early and you ask your questions often to your mentors. That will reduce the pressure that you face while doing this work. Yes, so that's from my side.
Yeah, I have pretty much same to add on. Like my project, since it's mostly on data structures, I did a previous Julia Seasons of contribution, and before that, what I did was just look up the project description that was there on the Julia webpage, and then I contacted my contacted my mentors, and they actually help a lot. Like the community is really awesome. So if you are willing to stick around and ask the like what resources and what are the ways you can at least get a grasp of what project you are expected to do, like your mentors will really guide you well. And after that, yes, there will be a bit of effort from your side that's needed as well to understand if you are not coming from that level of domain expertise, but as you go on you will develop that through your project. Yep. That's
awesome. Yeah, anyone want to add on anything else? Cool beans. Let's look at the next one. It looks like the highest ranked next question is, I got to keep refreshing. Who decides which proposals are accepted? I will take this really quick. This is a good question. So the sort of basic, and this is all actually on the Julia language website. If you go to the JSOC section and then you go under the mentor section, it sort of outlines the process for how project selection happens. But basically, students submit proposals, mentors evaluate the proposals, and then say, hey, these are all really quality applications. We'd really like a slot from Google for the student. The mentors basically say the number of projects that they think are really awesome. And then we, the Julia language, take the basically number of slots that the mentors tell us we need. And we say, hey, Google, we'd really like, 20 slots. And it would be really nice if we could get, 26 slots. So we send them our minimum number of slots and our maximum number of slots. And then Google comes back to us and says, okay, here's 15 slots. That's usually what happens. They usually give us less than our minimum number. So what that means is in the past, we've supplemented Google Summer of Code with what we call Julia Summer of Code, which is the same exact timeline as Google Summer of Code, same exact expectations. You're just paid directly through the Julia language instead of directly through Google. So we usually provide the number of slots to make up the difference between our minimum number and the number that Google actually gives us. So I think last year there was like a 9 student delta, and we funded those 9 students through Julia Summer of Code, if I recall correctly. So that's a good question. It's a multi-tiered effort between the mentors and the program admins for Google Summer of Code. Anyone have anything to add on to that? All right, cool. The other question that's sort of in line with this is, will there be Julia Summer of Code, Julia Season of Contributions this year? Really depends on the number of applicants, who the applicants are. Are there a bunch of really high quality applicants that we can't take because we didn't get enough slots from Google? If that's the case, potentially there will be, but it's sort of, we don't really know until after we've reviewed all the applications and after we've seen how many slots that Google has given us. So TBD as far as whether there'll be a Julia Summer of Code this year. But this is a great question for you all. So what is the expected degree of technicality and formal language that the proposal must meet? Yeah, this is a great question. So, just generally, how technical are you? Should the proposals be, and all that stuff? Someone feel free to take it away.
So for me, it was at least that it somehow should demonstrate that you know the tools you're talking about, but not reproducing all the results in a paper or whatever. So of course, then there's some kind of technicality in it, but it's more, well, somehow the session where you link, for example, code contributions or so, I think similar important, and also maybe a first part where you motivate the general interest of your topic to the community as a own.
Yeah, I guess that this is another question that could be answered by, it depends on what your proposal is supposed to be. For example, mine was probably over technical because it was based on the results from a paper, or reproducing results from a paper. So all the proposal, I decided to do some similarities between other models that were not maybe interesting to implement into the library. So it was more on the technical side because I had to explain those models, but not too much into detail, at least from my end. So again, maybe it depends on what you're going into.
Okay, my turn. Probably I don't think it exists some expected degree of technical expectation, but just probably you should show that you understand what you're going to do in these 3 months, and you have a plan. You understand the project, and just show your ability of finish this project. And how much technical details, probably it's not so important, but probably it's not be so much, and not just simple words.
Yeah, I think those are great responses. And again, we'll go back to what we were talking about before. I think this, the person who's ultimately sort of your biggest advocate during the whole Google Summer of Code process, and I'm sure all of you can sort of advocate for this, is the mentor. So sending in a proposal to your mentor earlier than the deadline and saying, hey, do you think this has enough technical detail to sort of showcase that I know what the project entails and I have the required background in order to do well in this project? That's totally a fair thing to do, sending in your proposal and just having them take a quick glance to make sure you're not too into the weeds, but you're also not too general that it's not clear whether or not you actually know what you're supposed to be doing for this project. So get in touch with the mentors and sort of ask those questions as early on as you can.
Yeah, and also to add to that, there is the possibility of also sharing your proposal into the JSOC Slack channel. I saw last year a couple of proposals, and there is always some nice feedback from the community, from past accepted students and also from possible mentors. So it's always a good idea to throw your proposal in there and see how it does, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great call out. Looks like the next top rated question is, have any Google Summer of Code alumni been offered internship positions by Julia Computing? If yes, how does one qualify? I'm guessing that there is someone who has done this before. It's not necessarily like a program that's offered by Julia Computing, to my understanding. But if you're interested in working at Julia Computing, I'm sure you, if you know what Julia Computing is, you probably know the folks who are involved, and I would just suggest reaching out to them via email or Slack message. I don't know if anyone here has worked with Julia Computing before, but
yeah, I actually am working for Julia Computing at the moment, and there is something that has come through Google Summer of Code. So I just won't qualify for this. I guess the research that was done to Julia Computing.gl was something that Julia Computing was interested in. So it's again something very specific. So I don't know if there are any general guidelines into how to do it. I mean, it came out of the blue for me, at least. So I shouldn't. I don't know how to make suggestions in this regard, let's say.
Sweet. Let's go. It looks like this perhaps might be an interesting question, because folks are always very interested in Flux. But the question from Sam is, which one of you contributed to Flux projects in Google Summer of Code? And it seems Sam is saying it is way more competitive than any other project in Julia. Any tips for taking Flux projects? And Sam's remarking that he still doesn't have any PRs for Flux yet. So have any of you worked with Flux for Google Summer of Code? I'm seeing some shaking heads, which maybe underscores how competitive it is. I'm not sure. Any sort of general advice then for Sam, with 0 PR still, and sort of the idea that Flux may be more competitive? I think, Sam, what I would suggest for you is pick something that's interesting to you, just generally, and pick something that has less competition. I mean, that's just how you do better in life, is by competing against less people. So unless you specifically are like super interested in Flux, and if that is the case, again, same general advice from me: get in contact with the mentors, try to get some PRs going, and that will definitely help you. But anyone want to add on to that?
So I had at least a feeling last year that so also that many people wanted to go to Flux. So that's kind of true, I would say, from the Slack channels. But also many of them wanted to do Model Zoo and then very related projects, right? Which is then, if there are many applications for almost the same topic, then it's of course also harder, right? Instead of, as Logan said, talking to inventors, what might be the specifics in Flux, what you could fit in, right?
Yeah, Frank, that's 100% correct. I think we had probably like 20 proposals last year for Model Zoo stuff. And I actually believe that this year they took off the Model Zoo project just because we were getting so many applications for it. And I don't even think we selected anybody to do Model Zoo stuff last year. So again, find something more specific, and try to get involved with that project. But I believe in you, Sam. You can do this. This is a good question, and it's super general, so we can get some good answers. But is there an application format that should be followed when applying for Julia as an organization? So perhaps, I don't know if there were specific resources that you all used when you were doing your applications, but or some format that you followed. So if you want to just go around really quick and talk about it, the answer could be there was no format and I just sort of did something. But yeah, feel free to, someone can take it away.
So I personally use the CM format because it looks nice, and then simply wrote my application in that, right? And then structured it as you would intuitively do it, right? Like motivating session, timeline session, and about me session.
How I remember it's some of guideline for how create a proposal to Julia when you try to contribute. And also another tips, you just can find a lot of example of proposal from last years, thousand, and you just try to repeat some of the moment from this proposal. That's all.
Yeah, mostly and also like if you follow the Slack channel, you'll see proposals, others proposals being floated around there. So that's a good way to know what part of your proposal is lacking, and maybe add on to that from or what others have and what you're lacking. So that's a good way. Just be active in the community. And
Those are great answers and good suggestions. So I would, again, on the Julia language website, under the JSOC tab on the right-hand side, there is an application guideline for students where the Julia language asks specifically for folks to include certain things in their application. So definitely look at that. And then again, generally, I'm sure there's a lot of good advice out there. If you just Google how to make a great Google Summer of Code presentation, there's probably a lot of videos or blog posts or the like. So definitely take a look at that. Let's see. Does anyone see any? I don't need to be the only one suggesting questions, but any good questions that you all would like to answer? If not, I've got a bunch that we could hop onto.
So how many proposals might be a good one, right?
Yeah, that's a great question.
So I personally just submitted one, because then focusing on one good one and discussing with your mentors, I think increases the chances by quite a lot, right? Because yeah, if you discuss early and enough with your mentors, then you're more likely to have a good one, right, than two, average ones. But in principle, you can submit, I think, from the website up to 3 proposals, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think the 3 proposals are 3 different proposals, though I don't know if they are for the same project. So I proposed one as well, the only one for the Julia computing, and I also suggest like to focus to get one quality proposal instead of like branching out. But yeah, I think there is the limitation of 3 for 3 different associations, I guess. But I'm not sure. I should check out.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know that there's the 3-person rule, but I don't know whether or not you can. I think you can apply 3 for the same organization, but perhaps I'm wrong about that. So definitely double check, but the number is 3.
Yeah, I remember it's 3, but my experience, I concentrate on one proposal because it's 10 page, and you should. It's very difficult to write 3 proposal, so I just concentrate on one.
Yeah, perhaps just so that we can see the trend here. Saranjit, the question was about whether or not what the number of how many proposals can you submit for the same project? So I'm wondering how many proposals you put in and for different organizations and things like that.
I submitted just one proposal because it takes quite some time to write one and get reviews on whatever you have written from your mentors or potential mentors. So it is always good to write one proposal really well. If you're really confident, you can go for more. But I had done one.
And Gustav, did you submit one as well?
Yeah, one good proposal is good enough, I guess.
All right, well, we'll take that as consensus. One proposal, make it really good, and hopefully that works out. That's a good question, though. And interesting that all of you were accepted for Google Summer of Code, but only put in one proposal. Any other good questions that folks are seeing pop up? I don't know if this applies directly to any of you, but this could potentially be an interesting one. Someone's asking, can I apply for a project that is not in the list of projects if I found a potential mentor? I don't know if this applied to any of you, or if you worked with projects that were listed.
I
can
know
take
a
this one.
student from.
I had worked with a listed project, so it's better that you contact your mentors earlier and get your work or your topic of interest discussed with them, and then it is better to apply to that one. And there are high chances that once you discuss before, it will be listed in the list of projects that are possible for this season.
Yeah, you just if you have some idea or your own project, you can just write mentor or in Slack in Julia and describe your idea, and probably it will be very interesting, and someone will be want to that you implement it. So it's not necessary that project was from the list.
Yeah, I think the caveat to this question, and I agree with both of you, is that just making sure that the mentor is aware that you're going to submit this new proposal is sort of the best part. I think, truthfully, you can submit a really good proposal for some new project with all the right technical background. But in a lot of cases, if you haven't communicated this new idea to the mentor, the chances of you being selected for that project go down significantly. So if you have this idea and you're planning to submit the proposal, reach out to your mentor so that they're aware that you're going to do this, and that will definitely help you. That was a great question, though. I think the top rated question, and we can hopefully get some insight from all of you on this one, but the question is, what if my project diverges from my initial proposal because of some technical challenges? So I'd love to hear if this sort of process or situations happen to any of you during the summer.
I mean, I can start off with this one. And my project did diverge a little from the initial proposal. And I mean, as with all, I guess, the other answers, the key thing is to communicate with the mentor, you know. So there were some technical challenges, we could say, as you put it. And some papers weren't, I wasn't really able to replicate the results on some paper for some reason. So we decided to get other models to implement. So it was just based on communication and saying that because of external issues, I wasn't able to do some stuff. So, I mean, it's not a problem as long as there is the approval of the mentor. I guess that's the thing to stress out.
My project did not deviate from the topic, but yes, I could not complete it to where I was expecting it to end. In such cases, there is a rule that you need to submit the last commit of where your project is at that time point, and also you need to communicate this with your mentor. And if it's really a complicated process, I am sure that your mentors will understand, and that will be allowed.
Yeah, for me, there was two main parts of my proposal. And then what happened is that all of us basically were more interested in some part of the second part, so to say. And then we skipped a few things of the first part to focus also on the implementation of the other ones more, right? But this was, of course, then also communicated with all the mentors, and I mean, was great, right? Because then it's not stuck to the first timeline, but you can also focus on the best things, right? To also write then interesting stuff up in the end.
Yeah, the same thing. I skipped some of the topic from my proposal and my final implementation. Not finish all the goal, but I finish all these like main goals. Probably it's okay that final result will be a little bit changed, but yeah, you need to communicate with your mentors and ask it's okay or not, what I need to do or what I need or not, and things like that.
Yeah, it was the same for me as well. I couldn't like there was this interesting part of interesting data structures versus a non-interesting data structure. So and it was taking like it was a very awesome technical issue as I put it. So it was taking quite some time to debug. So like my mentor suggested that I go for the first part and leave out the second part. And I it got completed, but whatever I wrote in the proposal, it was definitely a very like high aim. I couldn't achieve that, but my mentors were okay with it, so I guess it's fine. It happens.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I think if we could sort of sum up what we've talked about for the last 37 minutes so far in 2 sentences, it's communicate with your mentors and submit one proposal is what it sounds like the general trend is so far. But I think it sort of underscores the reality that if you want to have success in your project for both submitting an application and during the summer, again, communicating with your mentor often and about the project is going to be to your advantage. I'm looking at some of the other questions. It sounds like there's some general questions about from Sam again, and Sam's asking, will the mentors help us for PRs? Can I ask for help with a PR? I've got many PR ideas, but need some help with actually implementing them. Anyone sort of, I think, Sam, the answer to this question might sort of vary, perhaps maybe not, depending on sort of what stage you are. I think if you're talking about sort of initial PRs to sort of just get familiar with the code base, anyone want to sort of answer that as far as like your experience getting started with a project beforehand, and then perhaps we can also talk about the PR help / mentorship during Google Summer of Code separately.
Yeah. So the mentors are ready to help you, provided you are going through the materials that they have shared with you. Usually, there are calls set up with the mentors, and you can talk to them prior to starting your project. So initial some material that you need to read, that is essential, that you need to do that work. And while the project progresses, you have completed a good amount of work. Your mentors are really helpful to review your work. So yes, but review, but at a like a significant stage, when your significant work is done. That time you can just ask your mentors to review your work. But yes, please don't hold back from asking if you're stuck, and don't waste time just thinking all on alone. It is always good to communicate if you're stuck.
Yeah, does anyone else want to add anything as far as like I know this is a challenge because a lot of the mentors are super busy, especially if you have Chris Rakakis as your mentor. So any thoughts on sort of balancing how to get help when you're stuck versus trying not to sort of, send too many requests for support to your mentor? I think generally, one of the really nice parts about being in the Julia community and doing a project with the Julia language is that you have this huge community of folks. So you really shouldn't only be seeking help from your mentor. There's definitely other folks outside of your mentor in the general community on Slack or on Discourse who can help you. So anyone have an experience or something like that they want to touch on?
Yeah, I would say also likely if you need some help at the final stage, right? Anyone also other than your mentor could review your pull request. And that's also kind of a big help, right? Because they will say how you write something more efficient or so, because they also want to have the good code in the library in the end. So at this stage, it can happen, right, that other people then your mentor jump in and also help you to get it done. And also in the beginning, if you have just a basic idea of the pull requests you want to make, then it's also maybe already good to just discuss on an issue, right, and then get that also like public on GitHub and have other people tagged by your mentor also, which are maybe also experts on that topic. Oh yeah, or the Slack is also very good, right? The help desk in Slack, pretty good.
Yeah, Frank, I totally agree. If you're sort of tackling your first issue or your first pull request and you're looking at some GitHub repository, making the communication open and public is to your advantage in that case, because as Frank alluded to, you don't just have the support of your mentor, you have the support of all the other maintainers for that package who also, independent of Google Summer of Code, want you to be contributors to their package. So asking on an issue or opening a pull request and saying, hey, can somebody review this, is totally fair. That was a great question, Sam. Sort of another similar sort of question from Sam, asking, during Google Summer of Code, can I ask for help with my mentor if I don't know how to design/implement something? This is perhaps a good question. Did any of you sort of have to do something for Google Summer of Code and you're like, beforehand, you're like, I have no idea how I'm actually going to do that, and I'm just sort of going to have to figure it out down the line to get this piece done for my project?
During the project, I got stuck in a dependency loop of like the packages that there's data structures and there's ordered collections. Those are both are dependent on each other, and I was implementing something for the ordered collections, and there was this dependency loop. So I didn't know how to break out of this. So my mentors really guided me through that. Like those were really technical issues, but it was not that they told me something from scratch. I did something and it wasn't working, so they told me how to get that PR through. So that kind of help you can get from your mentors, and also the community is really great. If you ask for the help, like high chance you'll get that.
Okay. Sorry.
It's look like a sort of previous question about how can I ask something about the mentor. Probably yes. It's like mentors, people who should help you to continue the whole project. So it's okay. Ask something about technical details or about implementation and something about the project in general with a mentor. But yeah, it should be some balance, be not so noisy or just ignoring communication with the mentor. So it's like a part of GSOC program, communicate with a mentor in the community in general.
I'm going to knock out two really quick questions. So the first one is, any successful proposals from previous years available online somewhere? I don't want to put anyone on the spot for this call, but if any of you want to share your successful applications from last year, you're welcome to in the JSOC channel on Slack. So there's none specifically online right now, but we'll try to get some up on the website and on Slack so that folks can take a look at that. Again, I think the caveat is that there's really no one size fits all proposal as far as what a successful proposal looks like. Depends on the project and such. So that's a great question, and again, we'll try to get some of that online. The other one that we can knock out really quick is, what was the percentage of successful projects in the last year? The percentage of successful projects as far as applying for Google Summer of Code with the Julia language, I don't know that off the top of my head, but generally as far as the number of projects that are successful, it's like 90+%. We usually have on average 20-ish students as part of Google Summer of Code, and we usually only have 1 or 2 students that quote unquote fail Google Summer of Code. And if you were to sort of look at the details as far as why that student wasn't successful in Google Summer of Code, 90% of the time it's because there was not enough communication with the mentor, some misalignment of expectations and what was happening. And again, as we've sort of hammered home, communicating with the mentor is how you can sort of get past that. But let's turn this question back to you all. And this is sort of the same question asked the second time with the word really in parentheses. So if you all could sort of touch on the time commitment during Google Summer of Code and how much time you really spent on Google Summer of Code. Again, with the caveat that this year's Google Summer of Code, the timeline and the expected time commitment is different from the previous year. So the sort of answers might not be applicable this year, but I think generally the timeline should still be relevant.
I mean, if you are speaking about hours per week, I think in the proposal I wrote that I was going to spend like around 40 hours per week, and in the end I did spend around that many, probably a little bit more. Again, it depends. In my proposal, I divided weekly what I was going to do, so some weeks were kind of easier, and other weeks were a little bit more on the harder side. But yeah, I think it's supposed to be something full-time, so around 40-ish, something like this should work fine. So not much, not too many, I guess.
So yeah, 40 to 45 hours is generally what the time is needed. But yes, it would be good if weekly you also set some time aside for writing blogs on whatever you have completed so far, because that is going to help you towards the end while you're documenting your project. So if you just set time aside for coding and time for writing what you have coded, it will help you at the end as your documentation to your work, and also work product.
Yes, Ranjit, that's a great call out. I think it also sort of the process of writing your blog posts holds you accountable, and is also sort of a nice like meta exercise to make sure that you're sort of staying on track with your proposal, because you really do have to write all that stuff up. And you can go back and look at your original proposal and see, hey, am I meeting all the expectations that that were I originally agreed to? It's also cool to just see what people are working on over the summer, and the folks in the community love seeing it. And I think it's great to see what students are working on. Anyone else have sort of a, you're welcome to share. If it took you 70 hours a week to do Google Summer of Code, feel free to share it, but otherwise we can move forward. Awesome. Sam's got another question. And this time Sam's saying, what should I do if I want to ask my questions to a mentor, but I feel it will negatively impact my chances of getting selected if any of my questions are quite silly / easy? This is a great question. Anyone want to take this one?
I would say it is really better to ask rather than holding back. Whatever is your question, however silly you feel the question is, it is not really silly. Um, it's good to have your doubts cleared at an earlier stage, because then later you will be struggling with those questions. So instead of doing that, just ask and get your doubts cleared, whatever your questions be.
Yeah, Sam, I agree with what Saranjit said. There's no silly questions. The best thing that you can do is ask your question. Phrasing it. I think the one of the positive things you can do, try to find an answer on your own. And then I think saying however you tried to find your answer is a relevant thing to do when you message the mentor. Say, hey, I have XYZ question. Here's sort of what I was looking up. I couldn't find an answer. This is what I was searching for. Is there a way that you can help me with this? I think that's totally fair game. And again, I think the challenge for mentors would be if you have a question and the first thing that you did was send an email to the mentor, instead of the first thing that you do being try to find an answer on your own and then go and ask the mentor if you can't find an answer. Another question about where can we see proposals submitted by previous year students? Don't have those online yet, but we will have them on the Julia language website at some point for you all to take a look at.
If you want to see proposal more general for the Google Summer of Code with other applications, with other organizations as well, a simple Google search probably is your best friend. I remember last year I saw a GitHub repository with where people SPR put their Google Summer of Code accepted proposals from last year's. So I mean, it's not specifically to Julia, but just to have an idea on how it should be structured, I guess it's a good place to start.
Yeah, that sounds like a really helpful repository and resource. So I agree 100%. Use Google to your advantage, and I'm sure there's things out there. Another really quick one, what does proposals accepted starting on March 29th, 2021 mean on the official GSOC website? Isn't the deadline on April 13th? Yes, the deadline is April 13th, but to my understanding, the proposal period opens on March 29th. So you can apply between March 29th and April 13th. Let's take this question just for folks. And I know, Gustav, maybe you have a good answer to this question, but around, what are some of the ways to start learning Julia? Because I think, if I remember correctly, you said that, your sort of first introduction to Julia was actually seeing some of these projects for Google Summer of Code. So how did you sort of dive into the language and start learning things and such?
Yeah, I think the best way to learn a language is to get your hands dirty with it. So I started reading up the documentation. Like the Julia docs is really good, like to get a really hang of this language. And there's this website, I guess, Learn X in Y minutes. So there you can learn Julia and get the basics of the language in a really quick time. And then the most important part is getting your hands dirty. Like pick up go to a Julia the repository or any packages that you like to contribute, and there will be some good first issues. Those are the things that can really get you started in understanding how a overall system of PR works, or how the repository is organized, like what are tests, unit tests, and all. So I got started in this way, like read up the docs and then straight away got to yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Anyone else have sort of suggestions as far as best resources to use when learning Julia?
Julia discussion already have a lot of answered question, and probably I'm just Google that, and so Julia array, Julia broadcasts, Julia something that need, and probably one of the first link is Julia discussion where people already answered at these questions. And all hypothesis issues that you can be with Julia.
There is also Julia Academy that you can follow, and also there are books written, wiki books, open books that you can use to learn Julia. So that is also a good resource.
Yeah, when we had Julia in our class in the university, the students also liked the Project Euler implementations, like for the first few things, which are easy to understand exercises, and you can use very simple functions, right, to get just syntax of the language and so on.
Yeah, those are great suggestions. again, there's a lot of sort of resources if you're just picking up Julia. If you go to the Julia language website, there's a learning tab up at the top, and there's a ton of different resources there. So I would suggest looking through all those, figuring out what the best way is that you learn, and then making use of those resources. We're probably going to answer all of Sam's questions today. Sam's asking again, I've never written a blog post before. Will I still get selected? How much blogs should I write? Anyone want to touch on this sort of question?
I mean, I also never wrote a post before Google Summer of Code, so it's not something that's supposed to. It's not something that you're supposed to know beforehand. I guess it's something that you learn on the way. I mean, it just has to be like a little summary of what you've done, maybe some results, something like this. It's not supposed to be over technical or too long. I believe mine were quite short to read, around 2 or 3 minutes. I did them weekly because I found it was easier that way, because my proposal was based around weekly progress. So, but I've seen other accepted students do it like at every month step. So it's your choice. You get to decide how many blog posts you should write. And again, don't worry about the experience. As I said, I never had any before, so I don't think it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, the same thing. Experience of writing blog before distribution, and also it's not necessary. It's more like traditional Google Summer of Code or something like this, writing blog. But actually, it's very useful thing for yourself. It can help systemize information and make a point what you do, what you not, and probably also it can help other people. It will show what you did and what you're gonna done in the future. So it's a good thing, right, proposal. Don't worry about this. Just.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Definitely not. How well you write blogs is not a criteria for selection, unless you've perhaps written a bunch of really good technical blogs before, and you can sort of include those in your application to say, here's some demonstration of my technical work. Other than that, there's sort of no bearing on how well you can write blogs. I know we're running out of time, so we'll perhaps rapid fire through some more questions. Someone is asking, in the GSOC FAQ, it says about 18 hours per week on average. Does Julia expect 40 hours a week? No, we do not. I think the 40-hour a week statistics that were being shared by all of the folks on this call right now is from past years. To my understanding, the scope of Google Summer of Code has been significantly decreased. It used to be like 350 hours expected over the course of 12 weeks or something like that. And now it's 175 hours over the course of like 8 weeks or something like that. So the amount of coding and the sort of scope of the projects has significantly decreased from last year to this year. Another question from Sam. Sam's asking, I'm planning to start writing my proposal after April 5th and send PRs till then. Is this a good idea? Anyone have thoughts on this?
It's good. It's like by the time if you send PRs, he'll understand like what project is going to pursue, and like then get the basic backgrounds that is going to put to make at least a 10-page long proposal. So that's not a bad plan, but yeah, but have them ready. The materials should be there so that you can quickly write up the proposal.
Yeah, I would just really quickly add to that make sure that the mentor for the project knows you're interested, and perhaps say, hey, like, I would communicate this with the mentor and say, hey, until I'm going to start my proposal April 5th, until then, I'm going to be working on PRs. And that way they're just aware of what's going on and they don't just think you're making a bunch of random PRs and then not going to apply for Google Summer of Code. So that's a great question. And as we run out of time, we'll take 2 more really quick ones. Someone says, I assume there's some feedback survey at the end of the program. Do you know statistics about how satisfied Google Summer of Code students, participants were previous years? That's a really good question. I think I don't think we as an organization have insight into the statistics. I know that there are surveys sent out to Google Summer of Code students, but again, I don't think we as an organization have sort of that data. What I would say is that if you want to know whether or not students are satisfied, truthfully, honestly, ping some of the students that are on this call, or if you go to the Google Summer of, or if you go to the Julia Language website, you can see a list of all the students who have previously done Google Summer of Code. Reach out to them, ask them. I'm sure they'll give you their honest opinion about whether or not it was a good experience for them. But that's what I would generally say. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. Let's see if there's one last question we can take. I feel like this is a good one to finish with. I haven't started working on a proposal yet. Is it okay to start now? I feel like I'm late. I was focusing on contributing till now. Anyone want to take this last one?
I mean, it doesn't seem to be late. If you have some contributions online, it's fine. The deadline seems to be like the 12th of April, so you still have plenty of time to work on an application and get some feedback. I mean, so I don't think you're late, and starting now should be totally fine, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think there's still plenty of time. You have 2 weeks plus during the student application period, so plenty of time to continue to make contributions if you want to, and also plenty of time to put together a quality application. And that's going to do it for us. I want to thank everyone on the call with me today. I think it was great to see sort of insight from you folks about your experiences and everything. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed for the folks who are going to be applying for Google Summer Code with Julia. Again, the high level themes from today's call: communicate with the mentors, get started early, and there's no dumb questions. So looking forward to seeing everyone's applications when the application window opens, and hopefully you all have a great rest of your weekend. Take care, everyone. See ya.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.